So
Yeah.
welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Shopping with Graphs, Learn Rising Graph Database Technology for Full Stack Flutter Application. I'm so excited to welcome our speakers for today's workshop. We have Mackenzie Stinson. She is a developer advocate at Tigergraph, finishing her computer science degree at Boise State University. Beyond schoolwork, she has spent her time at Boise State cultivating communities with the school by creating club tennis on campus and leading the Artificial Intelligence Club. When she isn't working on existing projects at Tigergraph or focused on schoolwork, she enjoys golfing and spending time with her friends and family. Kristine Zheng is a developer advocate intern at Tigergraph and a sophomore at MIT studying computer science and cognitive science. She is passionate about combining technology with research and is excited about the increasing use of graph technology in all fields. Outside of work and school, Kristine works in a neuroscience research lab and is a lead member in MIT Undergraduate Association's student-run Banana Lounge, a study area with hundreds of free bananas. For fun, she loves solving crossword puzzles and cooking and traveling. So I will now pass the session to Mackenzie and Kristine.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I will now share my screen. Okay, take it away, Mackenzie.
Thank you, Kristine, and thank you, Stephanie, for those great introductions. We are so excited and honored to be with everybody here today, especially for International Women's Day. What a great day to be coming together to learn new things about technology and what we're here to teach you guys about. Today, we'll be talking about building, I guess today and Thursday, actually, we will be talking about building a full stack application with Tigergraph. Kristine, if you could go to, I guess we can skip over our introduction slide, some cute pictures of us. Those are great. So you might be wondering why we're here today to talk to you about graph technology, and Tigergraph. Well, if you're like me and you use LinkedIn to promote your brand, or you're on Instagram connecting with your friends, or you're also like me and you were binging Netflix last night and you got recommended the best show to watch next, graph technology is under the hood of all of it. Graph technology and graph databases are best used for highly connected data to discover new relationships and deeper meaning within that data. Choosing Tigergraph to store and interact with your data means you'll be getting a flexible schema for high performance in complex transactions and high performance for deep analytics. It's really great for building recommendation platforms like we're going to be doing with this workshop, as well as even more complex machine learning applications. Next slide, please. So in this two-part workshop series, again, next part is on Thursday, Kristine and I will be walking through how to get Tigergraph started and set up in building a simple full stack application where its users can interact with the data stored in our database, our Tigergraph database, as well as producing product recommendations that's applicable to our data sets. And with that, I'll pass it back to Kristine to talk about our technology.
Thank you, Mackenzie. So what are we building it with? We will be using Tigergraph's Graph Studio, Fast API, Flutter, and Firebase. So more details about the architecture. In the backend, we have Tigergraph, which is where we'll store our data, the relationships, queries, so on. We'll have Firebase for storing images. In middleware, we'll have Fast API to have the endpoints between Tigergraph and Flutter. And in the front end, we'll have Flutter for our web app. And in this first session, we'll be going over the data, Tigergraph, and environment setup. So we will be using data from data.world. I'll be showing you that soon. And we will be using Tigergraph Cloud So our GUI to build the schema, load data, and write queries. And finally, we will have an environment set up for next time. Passing it back to Mackenzie.
And just to touch base on what we will be discussing on Thursday, we'll be breaking down the middleware and using Fast API to create our endpoints to connect to Tigergraph and call those queries. We'll be breaking down our Flutter application, going into the dependency changes necessary, some of the foundations of a Flutter application, utilizing navigation for our web app, as well as getting everything connected to Tigergraph to that middleware and Fast API. And to end the day, we will be initializing and uploading images for our Firebase storage, so we can access images from our Flutter application. And I will pass it right back to you, Kristine.
Thank you. Yeah, so we will probably get started soon with the demo. And just before that, I kind of wanted to explain a little bit more about graphs. So like Mackenzie said, graphs are pretty useful for like recommendations, security, and other purposes. Basically, a graph database stores vertices and their relationships as a graph instead of as a table. And this makes it a lot easier to see relationships. So for example, you can represent patients and their doctors as vertices and the edges between them as their relationships. So patient sees doctor, for example. And we will see how this applies to our data. Today, we will be doing consumer reviews of Amazon products. Here from data.world, we have this really good data set. So there's a ton of reviews of Amazon products for Kindle, Fire Stick, and a lot more. And this one is especially interesting. So we'll be using the 5,000 set. Here we see there's an ID for a lot of products, the date added, the name, categories. There's like review information. So for example, does the reviewer recommend? Do people find the reviews helpful? And what did they rate the product as? And there is the actual text of the review, the username, and so on. So you might be wondering, why is there so many repeated IDs? Well, if you go back to the review username, you see all the usernames are different. This is because multiple people have reviewed the same product. And that makes it really great to be using graphs, because that means that we can represent each product as a vertex, and then they have relationships with their reviewers. So reviewers would be separate vertices that have edges to the product. Next, we will be seeing a little bit more. So I downloaded that data and I cleaned it using pandas, because Tigergraph actually needs a specific format to be able to read the data. And you can look at this notebook later if you want to see how I specifically did it. But I removed a couple of columns that weren't really necessary for our purposes. And I also expanded the categories column, because we want each of them to be on one row so it can load into our Tigergraph GUI. And next. And you can see this is the completely clean data. And if you're planning to follow along live, it is pretty important that you actually download this data right now. So let me just put the link in the chat. So you want to download it and unzip it. If it isn't working, let us know. And we'll start talking about Tigergraph Cloud. Okay, If it seems like everyone is all set, then we can move on to talking about the actual graph, sorry, the graph, the queries, the schema, and other things. So Tigergraph Cloud, it's a really great place to hold your solutions. If you don't have an account, you can make one really easily right now. So let me paste the link here. And I just logged in with my email. I'll give everyone maybe a few minutes to do that. Maybe put a thumbs up in the chat if you're all set with the data and Tigergraph.
Kristine, while we're waiting for everybody, was there like an experience when you were learning Tigergraph that kind of made it a technology where you knew you should, have it in your tool belt? Or was there like anything that made it different from what you've already learned in school?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I guess I first started using Tigergraph in an internship last summer. So I was actually working with McKenzie then too. And immediately I loved using graphs because I had learned about graph algorithms in my algorithms class in school, but I had only previously really used like tables and SQL, and it kind of didn't make sense. But graphs kind of immediately made sense because it was really easy to see like the relationships between so like different people, different products, and so on. So it like immediately clicked in a way. So that's why I decided to stick with Tigergraph. Mackenzie, do you have a story about Tigergraph?
I don't know. I think just how intuitive it is to understand and relate, people, places, and things with their relationships. It's kind of how our brains work and how we function. And so once we walk through the rest of creating our schema, the schema feels so natural. And it's weird to describe it as natural, but it's just an intuitive way to represent data. And then with the documentation and the resources that Tigergraph provided as we were learning it before we were even introduced to working here or that opportunity, it just felt like something we needed to be learning at school.
Yeah, I completely agree. I guess right now I see some people have put in their thumbs up. If you're still working on it, let us know right now. Otherwise, I'll proceed with Tigergraph Cloud. Okay, I guess I'll continue. So if you go to My Solutions, you probably wouldn't have any solutions yet. And then you click Create Solutions. So we are going to create a graph and schema using that is modeling our data from the Amazon consumer reviews. So if you click Create Solution, mostly just stick with the defaults. So I'll be using the blank starter kit. I'll be using AWS, TG free, and staying with the defaults. And you can name your solution. You can technically name it anything, but I'll try to name it something related. And set a password. I generally just go with Tigergraph. Subdomain name. And next, once everything is all set, you can click submit and it will start creating your solution. This might take a few minutes. So any questions so far? If you have any, just feel free to type them in the chat or message either Mackenzie or I.
I guess while we wait, I have a question. What made you think to pick the Amazon? Sorry, my throat. What inspired you all to pick the Amazon reviews data set?
Mackenzie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can. I think what we were looking for when choosing a data set was really how interconnected the data was. And so as you explore the data, there aren't very many products, but because each product has reviews from so many users and has so much information from different attributes, you know, you've got URLs, you've got your reviews, you've got, is it helpful? So many pieces of information about just specifically 24 products. It gives a lot of expansive relationships to all of the products. And that's what we'll discover when looking through the data and getting to explore it in Tigergraph Graph Studio. One of the benefits of Graph Studio is, you know, some applications and platforms can be intimidating to actually explore your data with. But like I said before, Tigergraph is so intuitive that it shows it kind of in the way that your mind is thinking about relationships. So if that answers your question, we just wanted a lot of connection. That's what we're looking for here at Tigergraph.
Yeah, and I guess the Amazon dataset is also pretty relevant for a lot of, I guess, maybe solutions you would like to build. And it's also pretty interesting for our full stack application, which you will see more of on Thursday. So, yeah, it's still pending. It takes a couple of minutes. I guess something to note is for free solutions, you can only have one at a time. You can pay to have more than one solution active at a time. What that means is after you're done with a solution, you can terminate it and then you won't be able to open it again. But generally, when you're done with it for the day, you would probably just stop the solution and then next time you would start it again. Yeah, no worries. You definitely don't have to use the same domain name. Yeah. Is everyone all set? If you have any questions, definitely continue to type them in the chat. It's kind of unpredictable how long this takes. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it's really fast. So I guess while we're waiting, I can show. So actually, Mackenzie and I created a microsite with our documentation. So afterwards, if you have any questions, you can definitely go through this again. It explains a bit of what we've gone through. So the data, setting up Tigergraph Cloud, and so on. And it also has some setup for the Thursday session. Would you like to add anything, Mackenzie?
It really has all of the setup for the whole application. Linked is the repo to the code and all of that. But a lot of the front end and Firebase pieces, and especially the middleware, is kind of tailored so you can hopefully take this information and, you know, your new knowledge with Tigergraph and building your own solution to making it applicable to your own data set, creating your own front end that, you know, represents what you're trying to showcase and being able to promote your own project afterwards. So everything is explained in a hopefully less intimidating way. It's, you know, building, when you're looking through documentation from all of these different technical outlets, a lot of it can be really intimidating. So I think we have hopefully done a good job at breaking down each of the pieces in a hopefully accessible way.
Oh yeah, we can definitely share the link. And all of this information and our slides will be sent out afterwards. So yeah, not really sure why it's ready. Okay.
Woohoo.
Yeah. So here, if you click applications, you will see there's Graph Studio, and that's what we'll be using. And just to say again, here is the different operations you can do. So you probably don't want to click terminate unless you never want to use your solution again, but you can click stop after you're done for today. And here is Graph Studio. And I will be going here to create a local graph. I'm going to call mine product graph. But you can again name this anything as long as it follows a format. If it doesn't follow the format, it will tell you that the name is invalid. Yeah, so I think the format generally is like no spaces. You can use capital letters. I can't quite remember if you can use hyphens, but definitely it's pretty safe just to capitalize every word in your name.
Gotta love that camel case convention.
Mm-hmm. This is also taking a bit, probably because I'm sharing screen, but I guess just letting you know ahead of time. So in case you want to save your solution for a really long time or share it with someone else, you can click, okay, export your solution, but here we are ready. So in design schema, we will begin designing our graph schema. And if you look back on the data here, I'm planning on creating 3 different vertices. So one for the actual product, one for the category, and one for the user. And then everything else that is on here will be either an attribute, so something stored at the vertex, or it will be an edge. So reviews will be an edge between a user and the product, for example. Here I'm going to add local vertex type. I'm going to name it product, have its ID as attribute. And if you look back on the data, so each product has an ID, but it also has a name. So I'm going to add an attribute called name. And this attribute is a string. And that's all set. You can see some information if you hover over it. Next, I will be adding category. And this one will also be ID as attribute. And as you see for categories, its ID will just be the name of the category. I haven't yet loaded the data. I'm just modeling, I guess, what will be the graph data later. Okay, let me just close this page. And that's it for category. Next, I will be adding user. And for user, I will also be adding their ID as attribute. And I think that's it. And now I will be adding the edges in between. So for example, there is an edge from user to product. So I'm going to call that user reviews product. And I want to make it a directed edge because I want it to be able to go forwards and backwards when I'm writing queries. And you can definitely look at the data again to see what attributes, but I think I'm going to make attributes do recommend, number helpful, and then rating. So do recommend. This one is a Boolean. I think there was rating. This one was an int. Oh, and I guess you should declare the type for each of your attributes, and then I will have number helpful, which will also be an int. And that's it for this edge. And then I will also create an edge from product to category. So I'm just making very intuitive names. So product has category, and this one's also directed. And I think this one, we don't have any additional attributes, so it will just be as is. And afterwards, you want to publish your schema. And I guess while it's publishing, I can explain a bit more. So for example, for any specific products, so here it's a Kindle, it's under computers, and the reviewer's name is, I will not try to pronounce that, but you will have the Kindle here. The Kindle is a tablet or like an electronic device. So it has this category, and then there is the user who has reviewed the product. And this is kind of a general schema, and later I will show you what the actual graph kind of looks like. So now we will be getting to the actual data. So earlier I sent a link for the zip file for the CSV. Do scroll up to download it if you haven't, because otherwise you won't be able to add data. So, okay. You click this plus button, you will be able to add data theoretically. It's being really strange right now. Give me a quick second. I will stop sharing, do this, and reshare.
One thing that was really interesting when learning Tigergraph and working with Kristine and our other intern group last summer was having conversations about how to build the graph and what really constitutes a good attribute and what's applicable. And so when you look at the greater data set, it includes image URLs and a lot of other pieces of information. And it's important to realize how vital data cleaning is and data preparation to set yourself up for success when building an application or understanding the use case of a graph database or any sort of database for that matter. Maybe we didn't need to represent the image URLs as an attribute, or maybe we didn't need this aspect of it, so we can focus on the most meaningful connections within our data.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So I guess getting back to it, for some reason, it's absolutely not adding, but if you click this and you click the add, you will be able to access all the files of your computer. Let me just quickly show that. So you will be able to click add, and you will be able to add your data here. And once it's loaded and you want to check it to make sure it's in the correct format, so all the columns are the columns you intended. And you want to click has header because our data has headers, which is like the name, ID, categories, and do recommend. And yeah, I guess, has everyone been able to do that? Afterwards, you can, sorry, my GUI is not working for some reason, but let me just try it quickly again. Okay, sorry about that. Afterwards, So for example, if I had data loaded in, you would click this map data file to vertex or edge. And then you would click between the data file and whatever vertex or edge you're mapping it to. So our ID from the CSV, you want to map it to ID. And then you keep clicking. So you want to map it to the corresponding one in the vertice. So for example, in user reviews products, we have a lot of attributes. You want to click ID to the product ID. You want to click username to the user. Do recommend number helpful to number helpful, and then the rating to the rating. Yes, please let us know how you're doing. And yes, okay, I guess someone asked, what is primary ID? So primary ID is how you're differentiating your vertex from other vertices. So for example, in category, the primary ID would actually just be the name of the category. For products, it's the name of the ID. And for users, it's the name of their username. And this kind of varies a lot depending on what your data is, but basically you just want it to be a unique string or number or something that you can identify your vertex with. Is anyone working on the mapping right now? This might take a while, so let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I can keep going. This is kind of fast, but you can definitely come back to our website and look over everything again. So you want to click publish data mapping. So if you see here, there's publish data mapping, and that is after you have loaded all your data. And you should have stats that look similar to this. So you should have 24 products, 128 categories, and over 3,000 users. And the reason why there's so many edges is because there's a lot of reviews. So there's over 4,000 reviews of different products. And there is over, I guess, 200 different like category product relationships. Someone asked, can you modify the schema after data is already added? That is a really great question. So you can definitely modify the schema by going back to design schema. And you will have to republish the change to your schema. And depending on how much you have changed it, you should check your mapping and you might have to remap the data. But everything is definitely changeable. You just have to make sure to check because sometimes the mappings might get mixed up and you will want to republish your mapping as well. And
So sorry for the technical difficulties with building Kristine's solution, but in the meantime, I was able to get my already existing solution up and running. So I will quickly share my screen and we'll be able to finish walking through Graph Studio and our data. So as Kristine mentioned before, we map our data to the graph, and live, it'll look a little bit like this. So we've got our CSV in our data mapping section, and we can kind of click on each piece of the relationship. It shows the connection between the category connected to our category primary ID. We can see how a user reviews product and how that's connected, and all these different connections and how the data is actually being pulled from the CSV to the schema that we just designed. Again, Kristine talked about how the data is loaded, and we can just jump right into using the GUI to kind of explore a graph. So Kristine, is there a certain vertex or user that you wanted us to check out?
Yeah, I do actually have one. So a user you could check out is, I will type this into the chat. You can type Matt C. The capitalization is pretty important. So here you can definitely select specific users or specific vertices. But you can also ask the GUI to select some for you. So here, Mackenzie clicked pick vertices. So there's 5 of each category. And if you want to see the connections that connect to each vertex, you can double click. And yeah, here we see there's a user called Bigger Tigger, I think. And they
I think
have
that is Bigger Tigger.
they have reviewed a product. If you hover, you can see the name. So this is a Kindle e-reader 6. And
You can see
yeah.
reviews for electrical or products connected to our electrical category. You can see another product that's connected to our hard drives and storage, all very exciting categories. Or for Richard, you can see what Richard has also, here's a connection. You can see that Bigger Tigger and Richard have reviewed this product, the Amazon Kindle e-reader 6.
And if you click on one of the products, you will see all the reviews. So this one's a lot, but you can change the format by going down to the right corner and clicking force or tree, and it will give you a much cleaner result. And you can see for this specific product, it falls under video and home audio. And there is a few people who have reviewed it, and then there's a lot of categories. So the green, yellow is the reviewers, and the purple is the categories.
And we can see here that Make Dog liked the product and he gave it a 5 rating and he would recommend it. And we can continue on from there with all our data. But because of time, we'll jump straight into the queries. So Kristine, do you want to touch base on the queries that I have here?
Yeah, so queries are basically a way for you to explore the graph, change parts of the graph, and basically do data analysis. And queries are, you can write queries in our GUI using GSQL, which is the graph query language for Tigergraph. And here is a query that searches to see if a product exists based on its string ID. So once again, this ID is the name of the, it's the ID number letter combination of the product from our data. So in the second line seed, you are getting the vertex set of all the products. And then in res from line 4, this is a little bit similarly formatted to SQL, but you want to select any S or product from seed, which is your vertex set, where the ID of this S is equal to the input ID. And finally, to see your result, you print res.
Let's check out the same query with a user, since those IDs are a little bit more intuitive. We'll check out Richard, and Richard does exist.
Yeah.
But we can also see that Kristine is not a user, so she does not populate. And then moving on to your recommender query.
Yeah, so this is kind of the most important queries we'll be using. So recommender, this is in a different kind of format called version 2. And you take an input of a vertex and you return a vertex set, because we want to recommend different products based off of the input user information. In this one, we actually use something called accumulators. So accumulators can store information locally or globally. So locally would be like storing the number of edges that a vertex connects to, for example. And something global would be like the total number of edges or like the total number of vertices. So we have declared all our accumulators on top here. And I'll just go over the big picture. So from line 5, we're getting the input. Line 6, we're getting the product vertex set. From line 7, we're selecting all the products that connect to a user, to the users, such and we want to accumulate or add onto each of the product vertices the average ratings. So the average accumulator will do the average rating for you as long as you add the rating. And this is also selecting for if the ID is equal to our input ID. So if you look at line 9, it says if u.id equals input.id. And then you would add that to our set accum. And from line 12, we will be selecting. So we will be selecting people that have not been. Oh, sorry, no. You will be selecting products that were not in the set of used products that were used by this user. And for our results, you want to order it by the rating descending, so the highest rating first, and the number of ratings descending, so the ones with the highest ratings and the most ratings. And you want to print this result, and if you actually want to use this later, you should return the result. And here we can see Mackenzie has already inputted Richard. And here are our recommendations for Richard based off of what he has previously reviewed.
Awesome. And with time allowing, since we're kind of short on time now, we will leave all of the environment and Firebase setup in the slides to share. We've got a master document, so we're going to hop right back to our slides and wrap up from there. But thank you, Kristine. We will hop back into what is coming, what should be prepared for next time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mackenzie. Lifesaver. I can go back to sharing my screen. So we just had our demo and what to prepare for next time. So we would like you to, you will have this slide and you will have all the links. So these are all links. So we would like you to clone our repo from GitHub, import our solution. If you go on our microsite that we shared earlier, you will see how to import a solution. We want you to have the same solution. So we will have like the same names for convenience. And we would like you to set up Firebase and set up the product. So anything you want to look over again, definitely go on the microsite and feel free to reach out on Tigergraph's community forum. And there's also this master doc of important links. And next time will be on Thursday, so March 10th.
So just to touch base quickly, we'll talk about it more on Thursday, but we are, once we have implemented Flutter and Firebase into our project, we will be able to share with the Google development community at the Google Development Library. And you can check out those links in the slides as well. Next slide, please. Again, we have all our important links. Join our community, get Graph certified, and we'll touch base more on our resources next time. But I'm going to pass it on to Navira to talk about Tigergraph's $1 Million Challenge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Let's go to the next slide. I'm really excited to talk to you about quick thing about me. Oh, huge fan of Women Who Code. Been doing events with Women Who Code even previously where I was. My passion is in creating experiences for others. I lead our strategic growth efforts here for developer community at Tigergraph. So lovely to meet you all. Next slide, please. So a quick thing about this awesome Graph for All $1 Million Challenge that Tigergraph has put together. We are looking for ways to innovate on graph use cases. And this contest is all about our global search for finding innovative ways to use the power of graph to solve real problems. And your solutions are going to be judged across these 4 dimensions of how is your solution impactful? Like how many people whose lives that you've changed? Did you come up with an interesting use case of graph? Did you solve a challenge in a cool way or interesting way? And then finally, you'll be judged on how ambitious and complex was your graph. Did you add a lot of features to your graph solution? And then finally, for the most applicable category, how did your solutions scale? So this challenge is open to everyone. We encourage startups, nonprofits, data scientists, developers, students to participate. And some of the benefits of being a part of this is you get to uncover insights to real problems, have the chance to win huge prizes, which I'll go over in a second, and develop graph skills. Now that you've seen this awesome intro from Mackenzie and Kristine, you can go on and expanding on your newly found graph skills. The submissions are due on April 20th, and we'll announce our winners the week of May 23rd. Next slide, please. So what are you building exactly? Well, let's start with the problem you're solving for. There you have 2 options. You can either pick a passion project of yours. So if you are a researcher or you've already been working on a problem, you could totally use this challenge to solve for that if you could design it as a graph problem. Or you can pick from 12 of our curated problem statements that we gathered from domain experts outside of Tigergraph. These are researchers, these are founders of nonprofits, et cetera, who've come and put together some of those pressing challenges they see in their domain. So you could see it's a wide variety of challenges that have a social good impact, from managing your personal identity on the internet to finding novel drug treatments, et cetera. So all you have to do, honestly, is build your project using Tigergraph. And of course, we have a ton of resources you can use to build on top of that. This is why we wanted to host this workshop today, so you could see that with Tigergraph, there's so many other ways of adding other technologies on top of it, like Flutter and Firebase, and make a really robust, user-friendly end product or end project. And what are you actually submitting? All you have to do is define what problem you're solving for. So if you're designing your own passion project, you have to tell us what is the problem you're solving for, or pick from these 12. You have to submit a short 3-minute video demo of how your project works, how your solution works. And you have to submit a URL link to your GitHub repo. And finally, you have to explain how your project strength in those 4 categories I mentioned of being innovative, ambitious, etc. There are links here for you to learn more about these problem statements and how to enter this contest. Next slide. So prizes, our grand prize is $250,000, and that will go to any team that has the highest overall score across those 4 dimensions. But the one I also wanted to particularly highlight is that we have an entire category dedicated to women, and we wanted to also promote and celebrate our relationship with Women Who Code. So a little play on words, Women Who Graph. And this will be awarded to any individual woman or a team of women who come together and submit for this project or submit for this challenge. If there is a tie between, your team's project is the highest overall score and you win the Women Who Graph, and you also tie for grand prize, for example, that team will automatically default to the grand prize, and the next runner-up will win that prize. So we'll always allow teams to win the bigger cash prize, meaning no teams can win 2 prizes. We also have another third interesting category called Most Popular. We will announce the finalists mid-May, and if you are a finalist, you could promote your project to your network, and if you get votes, you could win the most popular cash prize of $20,000. And then the next tier is if you have the best project in any one of the categories, we have additional prizes of first, second, third for $100,000, $50,000, and $25,000. So there's 15 prizes, 15 different ways of winning. And I want to see you all there participating. Next slide, please. We have a ton of resources to get up the learning curve and getting started. We have weekly office hours twice a week. We also have a forum that Mackenzie and Kristine have shared. It's a great place to post your questions. You can also email us. We also have resources 24/7. There are links there for a quick start guide, or if you want to get certified, there's a path there for you as well. And we also have a developer portal that has sample projects, additional connectors and APIs you can use to help you build your final project. And then finally, we have additional resources, which is why it's so important to register so that you can reap the benefits of these additional resources, which is if you need additional cloud credits, you can submit a form there. You can also request a problem statement consultation from us if you are unsure of how to go about solving for your own passion project. Next slide, please. Orange button, I think you know what that means. You could click on that and register directly on DevPost. DevPost is a platform that's actually hosting the challenge for us, and that is where you'll go to register and where you'll actually submit your final project. Next slide, please. Here are great links for you to get familiarized with. The first link for Graph $1 Million Challenge is our microsite. That's a great place to go to just learn more about who we are and why we're doing this. We also have more detailed information about our 30 global judges. Plus we have, oh, and one of the judges is in this audience. Zorin. Whoop, whoop. She's one of our amazing judges who's participating. And then there's that second link for DevPost, which is where you'll go to register, and there's additional information to learn more about the contest. I think that's what's the next slide? I think that's it. Yes, that is it.
Navira,
yes.
How many people do we already have registered?
I think 897 in 3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks?
Yeah.
That's some pretty good competition.
No, I'm really excited, and I hope I encourage all of you to participate. And everyone's a winner because you still get to build a project that you can show off and be proud of. So thank you all today for your time, and it was lovely being here.
Thank you so much. And thanks so much, Navira, for the shout out. Personally, I'm very excited to see what this amazing projects everyone builds using Tigergraph. And before we wrap up, just wanted to know if anyone have any other questions. This is your time to ask any last moment questions. But if not, we will have this next part, as you can see in the screen, on 10th March, same time like today. So you can come with your questions. Probably you can try some of the things that's been shared today. And if you are stuck at somewhere, you have some questions, please do come with them in our next session. And Mackenzie, Kristine, they will be able to help you with that. So if there are no other questions, then probably we can just wrap it up for tonight. Thanks everyone who joined today, and special thanks to Navira, Kristine, and Mackenzie for being with us today. It was an amazing session, really interesting stuff that you're working on. So very excited about the hackathon.